This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a very important show, as usual. I have on the line my very good friend and the owner of Crowdsource the Truth. And thank God for Crowdsource the Truth, because that's what it is. It tells the truth. It doesn't sugarcoat. It gets down to the issues. It's not there to be politically correct. It's there to get the job done. So, Jason, welcome to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Thank you, Larry. Good to be here.
I want to start off with what's been going on with regard to Roger Stone and the special counsel Mueller's investigation, the indictment of Stone, because just yesterday, my client, Jerome Corsi, Dr. Corsi, was forced to file, regrettably, a defamation complaint against Roger Stone. The case was assigned as a related case to Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who's presiding over the Stone criminal prosecution. And I might add right up front is that Dr. Corsi has never said anything negative about Roger Stone. He simply has testified truthfully. See, and that's the difference between Dr. Corsi and Roger Stone. Roger Stone is alleged to have falsified testimony and documentation to the House Intelligence Committee, claiming that he didn't have documents. He's also accused of threatening to kill a material witness and his dog, Randy Credico. Obviously, that's not just witness tampering, but it's also obstruction of justice. Now, these allegations are not just allegations. These are in Roger Stone's own words. From documents that the special counsel has, it shows these threats against Credico and his dog. And they also have testimony with regard to Roger Stone saying he doesn't have documents when, in fact, the special counsel knows that he does have documents. And they're such of an important nature that there's no way that Roger Stone could not have known that when he testified. But again, Jerry Corsi has been much maligned and defamed. He's not out there to hurt Roger Stone. He has simply said, I'm telling the truth. Now, he's person number one in the indictment of Roger Stone. And there's nothing in that indictment that accuses Dr. Corsi, my client, of any wrongdoing. So we're hopeful that Dr. Corsi won't be indicted. But if he's subpoenaed to testify at trial, it's his civic duty and his duty before God, as he puts it. And I agree with that, to tell the truth. Roger Stone believes that he can intimidate people, and that's how he got himself into trouble. And ironically, the same crimes for which he's being accused in this indictment, he's now committing against Dr. Jerome Corsi. You cannot try to intimidate a witness. You can't threaten a witness. You can see the complaint that has been filed in that court. It's on a number of publications. They picked it up this morning. And this is a serious matter. And that's why it was assigned to Judge Amy Berman Jackson, because she's got to administer to the criminal prosecution. Now she's having to administer to the civil defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress case, as well as an assault case. And you'll see the statements that Stone has made. These are just some of them. I mean, there's all kinds of them out there. And he uses surrogates to attack Dr. Corsi and me, people like Cassandra Fairbanks, people like Chuck Ross of the Daily Caller, people like Alex Jones and Owen Stroyer and others. And these people have not been named in the complaint in terms of being defendants, but if they keep it up, you can bet that they will be. Because, you see, there's a thing called justice. And Larry Klayman, if I can use the third person, I don't want to equate myself with H.W. Bush. He always used to talk in the third person as president. The famous comedian Dana Carvey used to do a great routine about that. But Larry Klayman does what he thinks is right. Okay, I don't worry about what public opinion says. I worry about meting out justice and doing the right thing. And what Stone has done to my client, and also smeared me, his lawyer, because he's trying to intimidate the lawyer of Dr. Corsi from backing off. And there's a long story about Roger Stone. You can read about it at larryclayman.com. It's abbreviated. You can read about it in my book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. I haven't talked to him for 15 years because he's just not a savory person. He fashions himself as being like mafia. He says he loves Hyman Roth and The Godfather. There's a reference to the mafia in the indictment, in terms of threatening Credico. And his admirers are Roy Cohn, a very, very unethical lawyer, of years past from New York City, in addition to Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon has good aspects to him, but you know what? Watergate was an absolute disgrace and a scandal. And anyone who puts the tattoo of Richard Nixon on his back and then when he's indicted and booked holds his hands in the victory sign of Nixon can tell you who that person is. Now, I'm not out to destroy Stone either. We're just defending my client, and I'm defending myself. And I'm entitled to do that as a lawyer and also as an individual. So I know that people will understand when they see the facts, because they're getting a lot of misinformation right now on TV, including Fox. People want to jump on the Roger Stone bandwagon. But you know what? That's a bandwagon that even the president didn't want to jump on, because you might remember the president disassociated himself from Stone during the campaign, even though he was an advisor to Stone, advising him on the gambling industry and all kinds of other things in the last many years. So that's the story with that. We're also going to be filing an amicus brief, that's a friend of the court brief, today in the criminal prosecution, because Roger Stone should be gagged. He's intending not just to intimidate witnesses, to coerce them to testify falsely, but it's going to pollute the jury pool ultimately in both the civil and the criminal cases against him, and that cannot be permitted. I'm not a big fan of Judge Jackson. I've talked about her before, but you know what? She's right in this instance. And she has to keep control of her own proceeding and look to see what she does with regard to a gag order on Roger Stone. She already told him he can talk about the birds and the bees. He can talk about the environment. He can talk about the new green aspect of Congresswoman Cortez. He can talk about whatever he wants. He just can't talk about the case, because that will prejudice the administration of justice. So go ahead and look at what's going to be up. We'll put it up on our internet site, the motion to join in the gag order. The special counsel is taking no position on it. I haven't really gotten a response from Stone's lawyers, any meaningful response. They continue to ignore this. And they're making a mistake, too, because by allowing him to continue to defame, coerce, and threaten my client without even intervening, and I don't know one way or the other, they could very well be furthering this improper conduct. I hope that they're not. But given the fact that they've given us no meaningful response, I've asked them to correct the false and misleading statements. I've asked them to take charge of this. They've now, in effect, become complicit with Roger Stone. And I want to get your take, Jason, on what's going on with that. And also, before we turn it over to get your take, there was the State of the Union message this week. And, I watched that. I thought the president did an excellent job. It was, he doesn't have the way of delivery of a Ronald Reagan, okay? But what he has is a truthfulness to him, which is amazing. And he's his own man. Ronald Reagan, I love the guy. I cry when I go to the Reagan Library. But Reagan was largely backed up by the people around him, okay? So Trump is out there on his own. He's out there on a limb. And he did an excellent job. And I'm watching Nancy Pelosi, that witch of a Speaker of the House, behind him, disrespectfully shuffling papers as the president's speaking. I mean, what was it, a Chinese menu? Was she doing a takeout order? I thought perhaps she was going to give the rebuttal, but in fact, they came up with this clown, from Georgia to do it, who just actually fell on her face, Stacey Abrams. And that was a gift to the president that they had her do it. And then, of course, there were the other witches in the audience wearing white, grimacing, disrespectful to the president. It was an absolute disgrace. And to follow up on all of this, even after Chairman Richard Burr of the Senate Intel Committee, who is a establishment anti-Trumper, even though just in the last few days he said we have found no evidence of Russian collusion. By the way, Jerry Corsi's been subpoenaed to testify. Why? I don't know. If they found no evidence of Russian collusion other than potential harassment, and we're dealing with that. But why is it that Adam Schiff, the congressman from West Hollywood, who chairs the House Intel Committee, has now opened an investigation? He announced it with great pride of the president into his finances. And this is an outrage, and I'm going to be announcing, and Jason, I want you to talk about this, and then we'll talk about what happened with regard to what's going on in Virginia and the Bundys. I want you to talk about this because you're going to join me in that investigation, and we also have private investigators involved, because we're going to be looking into Adam Schiff's finances. There's something shifty about Adam Schiff. What's been your experience with Adam Schiff, Jason?
Well, it's interesting, Larry, because I immediately was put off when Adam Schiff first started appearing on TV that I observed and everything. And then I was riding on a train here in New York City, and I was actually heading out to Long Island, and I got up to get off at my stop, as you would a couple seconds, a minute or two before the train stops. And I'm standing there in the vestibule of the train with this individual who I don't know, and I just said to him, "Has anybody ever told you you look a lot like Adam Schiff?" And he said, "I am Adam Schiff." And I just said right away, where the F is the evidence in this investigation that you're conducting? And I'll tell you, Larry, I said it kind of comically, but he got a look on his face that I've only seen a limited number of times in other people. And it was not the look of someone who was being honest and conducting an honest investigation. He certainly didn't explain to me what the evidence was or how the investigation was justified. He just got very red in the face. He looked at me with daggers, I believe you called them, and it seemed like he wanted to kill me.
That's the way he looks. We're going to be back with the second segment, Jason. Hold on with more of your observations of Adam Schiff.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Jason, continue with your interaction with Adam Schiff and, your concerns about what he's been doing up there. I mean, he's absolutely, along with Gerald Nadler of the House Judiciary Committee, Maxine Waters of the House Banking Committee, and a whole host of others. He's absolutely a despicable, vile individual. But I want to get more of your take on your interaction with him.
Well, that was pretty much the extent of the interaction. He was there on the train with his young son, who I would say was something in the range of 12 to 14 years old. And full disclosure, this was Passover. So Adam Schiff is Jewish, I'm Jewish. We were obviously both going to see family there on Passover. Larry, I don't mean to go off the topic here, but, there's a lot of people who smear Adam Schiff because they say he has dual citizenship with Israel and that major portions of Congress have dual citizenship of Israel. I've never seen any evidence of that. Do you know anything about that dual citizenship?
No, I don't. But I got to tell you, Jason, I'm a Messianic Jew, and I feel very deeply about my religious heritage. I'm a Zionist. And I have spoken out publicly, as others have, like Laura Loomer and others, about the Jewish left, particularly in this country. They're destructive of Israel. So actually it's getting a bum rap on that one. But on the other side of the coin, the Jewish left in this country is absolutely out of control. And the people are seeing this. And what concerns me is when they see people like Adam Schiff, it's fomenting anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And you not only have Adam Schiff, you have the other clown over there in the Senate, Chuck Schumer. I mean, and
I ran into him
look
on a
at these
train
people and I say, what an embarrassment to the Jewish people. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm just naming just a few. You got Hollywood, Jewish left. You got everybody else out there. And I understand how people feel because me as a Jew, I feel it even more.
Yeah, I also ran into Chuck Schumer on a train coming back from Washington, D.C. I spend a lot of time on trains, Larry. This was right after Schumer had appeared on Rachel Maddow's fake news program, where he essentially threatened the president, saying if you mess with the intelligence agencies, they got 6 ways till Sunday to get back at you. I think that might have preceded all of the things that we've seen, and certainly there's no doubt that Robert Mueller has a long history of involvement with intelligence agencies. As the director of the FBI, Bill Binney has told us how Mueller was involved in, had access to the data that Stellar Wind and some of the other NSA programs that you've gotten injunctions against them for, that Robert Mueller has benefited from this information. So Chuck Schumer was incredibly rude to me on the train. I asked him what he meant by that comment, threatening the president, and he said, I didn't threaten the president. I don't have time to talk to you. Basically shooed me away. People can see that interaction on YouTube by searching for Crowdsource the Truth or Jason Goodman and Chuck Schumer.
Well, if Pelosi is a witch, he's a warlock, okay? And these people are so dishonest. They just reek with dishonesty. And again, it's an embarrassment to the Jewish people, really. They're harming the Jewish people. And that's what bothers me.
These are the ones that are supposed to represent us, but they're working against us, Larry. It's very troubling.
And I don't want people to think that most Jewish people are that way. Most people are not. Jews. I mean, they tend to be conservative. They tend to be pro-Israel. You've got this whole movement in the Democratic Party now supporting the boycott of Israel. And there are leftist Jews that are part of that, along with Muslims. It's an unbelievable thing. The Anti-Defamation League is to the left of Mao Zedong. So anyway, that's that. Let's move on to something else because we'll talk about the Bundys in the next segment when we have Ryan on. And what's happened with regard to their case. The government took an appeal, so-called government. But this whole issue about the governor of Virginia, the attorney general, the lieutenant governor, the scandals in Virginia, blackface, issues concerning killing babies after they're born, issues about alleged sexual harassment. I mean, it's out of control. But I want to make one statement about the blackface thing. There was a famous singer called Al Jolson that my dad loved. And, he was in blackface. And I might mention that Michael Jackson, who I also loved, and I think he was maligned inappropriately, he bleached himself white. Was he a racist? It's just unbelievable. I mean, the country's spinning wild out of control. Everybody's a racist. Everybody's this and that. And I don't think the government of Virginia should resign because of that. He should resign because of what he said with regard to killing babies after they're born.
Yeah.
People make mistakes when they're young. They can repent and they can move on. And everybody in Washington, D.C. in particular has lots of skeletons, and the NSA knows them.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, Larry. I don't need to go in reverse.
I got to say, we've got a wrap break now, so we'll be back in the third segment, and we'll have Ryan Bundy on, and we'll let you finish the comment on this, Jason. Thank you.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
Back with my friend and my client, because we're co-counsel on a case that we filed against the prosecution, the Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Justice with regard to gross prosecutorial misconduct and crimes committed by the government in the Bundy trial. Ryan Bundy. He ran for governor. He's been on our show before. I hope that he wins next time. You don't usually win the first time. Abraham Lincoln ran 6 times for the Senate in Illinois, before he was actually elected president. That was the first election he ever won. So I hope Ryan someday will be governor of Nevada. But Jason, finish your remark about this issue with blackface and whatever. And let's move on to Ryan, because this is serious and this is important.
Well, the only thing I would say about it, Larry, I think we have a lot of examples of things that maybe in the 1950s or even the 1980s would have been considered comedy that today most people, I think, would frown upon and consider inappropriate. So, I don't really know what to say about going back to people's high school yearbooks.
I agree with you on that. Now, let's move on to Bundy's. And this week, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Nevada. Notice how I learned how to say Nevada, because people from the East Coast always say Nevada. And when you're in Nevada, you get made fun of if you say Nevada, okay? It's like potato and potato, tomato and tomato, okay? But this is a great state. Nevada is a great state. And the Bundy Ranch is one of the most beautiful pieces of land I've ever seen. I toured it with Cliven on Monday, and I learned a lot about how the Bureau of Land Management tried to drive him out of business and drove hundreds of other ranchers out of business, notwithstanding the atrocities that occurred when they tried to drive the Bundys off the land and assaulted family members, tased them, killed bulls in the herd so they couldn't procreate, so the Bundys couldn't make a living. It's a long story, and you can read about it. It's all out there on the internet, and people know. But the thing that really gets under my skin is that for a year I had been asking Jeff Sessions, I was communicating to him with public information and talking to him, asking him to end this prosecution. It's a political prosecution. He didn't do anything. He put his head in the sand, much like everybody else at the Justice Department these days. You see what's happening to the president. They're persecuting him too, his own Justice Department, because Robert Mueller is part of that Justice Department. No one takes control. The person who's in control is Rod Rosenstein, okay, who's a Democrat, a Clinton, an Obama appointee for U.S. Attorney in Maryland. And the Department of Justice has become the Department of Injustice. So for the last year, I've been trying to convince them, and we tried to settle everything with them. We said, look, you go your way, we'll go our way. All of our cases could be discussed against you in terms of any settlement, but they don't want anything have to do with that, because Maine justice doesn't want to play a role here, because nobody's in charge. In fact, to the extent anybody's in charge, it's the deep state. 97% of the lawyers there voted for Hillary Clinton and donated money to her. They're Democrats. They're leftists. But what happened is that the U.S. Attorney's Office, to cover its own rear end, because they were accused even by this Judge Navarro, Gloria Navarro, who was appointed by Obama, recommended by that evil Senator Harry Reid, that played a role in trying to drive the Bundys out of business and off the land. He put his own guy, Neil Kornze, in at Bureau of Land Management, that orchestrated this, along with the FBI and the Justice Department, this assault, this tyranny on the Bundy Ranch. Well, they asked for 3 extensions of time. They appealed the case. The last extension of time, I opposed it again, and they didn't even have an extension of time granted by the court when they filed their legal briefs just in the last few days. So I moved immediately to strike those legal briefs. They don't have permission to even do this at this point. But what are they doing? They're circling the wagons, protecting themselves, because if Judge Navarro's order is not reversed, where she found gross prosecutorial misconduct, where she found, in effect, crimes by the federal prosecutors and covering up evidence, threatening whistleblowers, not turning over exculpatory evidence, lying to her, and having witnesses go on the stand that also lied under oath, their careers are over. They could be disbarred and at least sent to a Siberian field office of the Justice Department where they can shuffle papers for the rest of their lives. So I want to turn this over to Ryan right now, because he's a hero. More than anyone at that trial, Ryan, who represented himself, I was advising him in some areas, and I was advising Cliven. Judge wouldn't let me into the case. I was representing him in other lawsuits and other matters. And I met with Cliven over 30 times in federal prison. So, I really got to know this family, a great family. They're real American heroes. And Ryan really won the day in that trial. He is the hero. So, Ryan, welcome to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I may change the name someday to Special Defense Counsel with Larry Klayman, because right now I don't feel terribly friendly to the prosecutors at the Justice Department.
Well, thank you for having me, Larry. I appreciate it.
What's your take on what's been going on over there, Ryan? I mean, tell us your feelings about it. What you're going through, what your family's going through. your run for governor, and what you want to accomplish in the future.
Well, the run for governorship was interesting, and I was offering the people my services, my knowledge, my talents, the things that I have learned, my experiences. I was offering them, what I have, so that I could help improve their freedom, their economy, their status as people of the United States. I guess they don't understand. There's a lot of ignorance in our country, and that people do not realize who they are. They do not realize what a state properly is. They do not understand how the federal government is supposed to act and what they're supposed to do. And so, because of all that ignorance, and the political realms of politics, it's just I didn't go anywhere in that election. That's too bad.
And I agree with it. We have a lawsuit for your dad, Cliven, to have the land declared owned by the state of Nevada, the citizens of Nevada, and of Clark County, which is where your ranch is located. Tell us your analysis, because you're a constitutional expert. I've always said you don't even need to go to law school. You know more than most lawyers about the Constitution. Why is that land owned by the people of Nevada and Clark County and not the federal government? And the federal government never had jurisdiction to go on your land in the first place.
Well, the land belongs to the state and her people and does not belong to the federal government because of the equal footing doctrine that was established by our founding fathers through the Articles of Confederation before the Constitution even existed, wherein they allowed for the formation of new states, and new states are supposed to be equal in every regard to the original 13 states. Now, it would be preposterous for us to believe that the original 13 states did not own all of the land within their boundaries. Great Britain did not retain any of the land within each one of those states after the Revolutionary War. Therefore, one of the characteristics of a state is the complete ownership of all the land within its boundaries. And so as our founding fathers established that every new state would be equal to, in every regard, the original 13 states, then that is one of the characteristics of a new state, that the land belongs to the state and her people. Now, there is a provision in the Constitution under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 that allows the federal government to purchase land from a state after getting the state legislature's consent for the purposes of military bases, arsenals, dockyards, magazines, and other needful buildings. But other than those 5 purposes, the federal government does not have constitutional right to own or control land, period.
And that's why your dad was always telling me correctly when I visited him in prison. He said, my defense is a 16-second defense. Okay, they don't have jurisdiction. And we have a lawsuit seeking to declare the land owned by the people of Nevada. Now, incredibly, I did it again, Nevada. Incredibly, the state, the Attorney General, has come in favor of the federal government. They're betraying the people of Nevada and Clark County. How can you be a state, just as logic says, when 80% of the land is claimed to be owned by the federal government? Same in Utah, same in Arizona, almost 50% in California. And that is an outrage. That gave the Bureau of Land Management the ability to come in and manage you out of business, attempt to. So that's really important. But let's talk, Jason. I want to get your take on this, Jason. Weigh in on this, because this appeal is an absolute outrage. It's being held over the head of the Bundys. If we're not successful, I believe we will be. They could be back in court. They could wind up being sentenced to life imprisonment. They are not being left alone. They already did 2 years in prison. Cliven, some of that in solitary confinement for no reason. And this is one of the worst examples of government tyranny that I've ever seen, short of what occurred leading up to the revolution.
I agree with you, Larry. I think this is a historic case. And, Ryan representing himself pro se showed that people need to take this power back, and they need to understand the Constitution. The things that Ryan is saying, he's reading from the Constitution. When Ryan and I first spoke about this, he had the Constitution with him. And the people that I've debated on Crowdsource the Truth and in the comments when we've done videos about the Bundys are people who are reading the mainstream news and think they know what's going on. But these are vehicles that are controlled by the very same people that are earning, or we should say stealing, millions and perhaps more dollars from the state, from the people, from people like the Bundys. And I think we have to reiterate constantly that Ryan and his family members were in a privately owned prison, a for-profit business whose goal is to put people in prison and keep them there.
And, of course, Ryan spent time in that prison. What was it like, Ryan?
You know, I was moved around to various different prisons. Each one had its atrocities that were worse than the other, and some of them were slightly better than the others in other areas. But all the same was true. We were being held there, being punished as though we were guilty without any determination of guilt, which is a complete violation of our age-old principle that we're innocent until proven guilty, and yet we weren't treated as though we were innocent. And so therefore, just simply not having our liberty, being held away from our wives and our children, is an atrocity enough that is terrible.
Yeah. And Ryan has 8 children, beautiful children. I've met some of them, and a great wife. And they stood behind him. And his mother, Carol, was like Abigail Adams in the Revolution. She had to tend to the ranch when nearly all the sons were locked up. I mean, and it survived. And I'll tell you something, it's a miracle, Ryan. I mean, when your dad came out that day, I was standing next to him, you know, when the indictment was dismissed, and he looked skyward and he thanked the Heavenly Father. And it was raining, and he said, you know, this is a good omen for ranchers that ranch on very arid land. And I do believe that. I believe that God will carry us through this, and it already has to a large extent. And, you know, what I really like about the Mormon faith is that it incorporates the Constitution, as I understand it, into the Book of Mormon, that the United States is the promised land, Israel's number 2. Okay, I love them both. I think they're both tied. And so I got to tell you, I learned a lot about your faith, and I respect it a great deal. You know, we got a couple of minutes left here, but one of the things we're going to do is to go to the Ninth Circuit, of which I'm a member. Navarro can't keep me out of that, on behalf of Cliven, and ask them to send the case back to the lower court just to open up the testimony with regard to the whistleblower, Larry Wooten. Tell us about Larry Wooten and why his testimony is so crucial, because that'll be the icing on the cake for this criminal prosecution to stay dead once that evidence comes into the record.
Well, Larry Wooten is a Bureau of Land Management employee who was there in 2014 on, you know, during the cattle gather that they were trying to impose upon us. And he was the internal investigator. In other words, he was supposed to make sure that all the agencies there were operating properly according to, you know, procedures and, you know, book code, et cetera, et cetera. And what he found was some great atrocities that were taking place internally. And he brought those to light to his superiors, and his superiors were either the instigators and or the movers of these atrocities.
That's right. I gotta cut it here because we're running out of time. But they disparaged your faith. They had a kill list on your heads on the walls, and this was covered up by Stephen Myray, the chief investigator. Ryan, we love you. We're going to bring you back again. You got a great family. Thank you for everything you've done for yourself and the American people. We'll be right back with the verdict section.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. You've just heard from Ryan Bundy. He's a real warrior. He's a good person. And so are his family members, Cliven, Ammon, Davy, Mel, Carol, Margaret, his sister, who was assaulted. This is an absolute outrage. If you want to learn more about this, you can go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. Contribute to Cliven's defense. You can also go to Freedom Watch, because we have cases on behalf of the Bundys at Freedom Watch at freedomwatchusa.org. And I also urge you to support Jason, at Crowdsource the Truth. Where can they also help you out, Jason, because you're so vital to this country?
Thank you, Larry. People can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and they can become monthly sponsors of the show and watch some exclusive shows that we have only on those websites.
We never got to finish up on our investigation of Adam Schiff because, Adam Schiff now wants to get into the underwear of our president. Given the fact that he's from West Hollywood, that could be interesting. But
that's what
the reality is here.
About Larry, from a legal standpoint, does he have any? How can he just start investigating someone without evidence?
No, it's true. I mean, I make jokes, Jason. That's the way I am. I'm a frustrated stand-up comic, but I'm not homophobic. But I thought that was a nice little clip. In any event, the reality here is that this guy is probably dirtier than hell. And we're going to be looking into his FEC filings, looking into his filings with the House of Representatives that he has to make, the financial filings. I always like the expression of Toyota. You asked for it, you got it, Toyota. and it's an outrage, but it's a serious matter. And he's just one of the warlocks and witches in the House of Representatives that, frankly, have to be legally dealt with in a legal, proper, and peaceful way. And, of course, we also have our citizens' grand juries on the horizon. You'll be participating in that. They're coming up shortly. And, we cannot depend on our system of justice anymore. We don't have a system of justice. It's dead. Now we've got to revive it. We've got to resurrect it with the people, like, we did in the Old West before we had a Justice Department. Now we have, worse than no Justice Department, we have a corrupt Justice Department. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Larry. I mean, as you're talking about Adam Schiff, I'm reminded of some donor that he has there in West Hollywood who seems to have a tendency to have young male black prostitutes overdosing on crystal meth while they're hanging out with him at parties. I just saw something in the news. The guy's name slips my mind. Buck something or something Buck.
That's a good nickname.
Yeah, exactly. But there's some.
No, I mean, you have to laugh sometimes. You're going to cry. I actually have a section on Freedom Watch's website called Laugh or You Will Cry. There's a meme on there. My favorite meme is a little kid sitting at a diner next to Barack Obama. And he says to Obama, this was during the revelations of Snowden with the mass surveillance, he says, "My daddy told me that you listen to everybody's telephone calls." And Obama responds, "Yes, but he's not your dad." So, you have to laugh or you have to cry. And, you can make a lot of points with humor that it's tough to make, in a serious way sometimes. And I hope that someday, if I have time, which I never do, I'm also a photographer, that I can do some more stand-up comedy because the American people can understand that. Unfortunately, our millennials these days, I think my dog has a bigger vocabulary than most millennials. So we have to find a way to try to get through.
You are very funny, Larry. You've got a great sense of humor. I always enjoy our conversations.
Well, thank you. I'm not auditioning for The Late Show or anything. I doubt that Jimmy Fallon will have me on there. I think Colbert is actually going to invite me. But I'll do my own comedy on the show. In any event, let's wrap it up here because we live in an age right now where this country's under attack, where it's heading down very, very quickly. I really love the President's State of the Union address. I hope he keeps that tone out there. I understand Stephen Miller wrote it, and he's a former Duke alum like I am, and I'm proud of him for doing that. But we need to support this president, and the way you do that is to go to freedomwatchusa.org. He has no real lawyers. We are his lawyers, in effect. And you, Jason, you support him and everything that goes around bringing about justice to this country. So I want to thank you. And I just want to say, go to Crowdsource the Truth, go to Pantheon, go to Freedom Watch USA, support us, and God bless you, God bless your family, and God save America. We'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.